And we're live with our 219th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on X, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on X. Seth, say hi.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Happy to have everyone back on. It's just me and Ken. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. Just by way of announcements, we do need to put out there that DEF CON has decided not or to postpone the trainings in Seattle. So that is not happening in November. We'll let everyone know when they decide to reschedule those two. I'm not sure what's going on with it yet, but they have rescheduled for whatever reason. You can probably follow DEF CON on X or on, join the DEF CON Discord if you need more info on any of that. Otherwise, Ken and I will be at LastCon in a few weeks. For anyone that will be there, we're going to be running a live episode of the podcast during LastCon on Friday afternoon. If you're going to be there, you're interested in either participating or being one of our panelists, let us know. We're just going to be talking about state of AppSec, right? How things currently are going, what our current expectations are, and what our current I guess analysis is, right, Ken? Like I don't know, is there anything special you want to bring up at LastCon that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know, talk-wise, I had reviewed the talks. But man, it's kind of eluding me at the moment. I wasn't prepared for the question. My memory isn't.
Of course you weren't. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. There's stuff. Yeah, there's stuff there. I don't remember what it is that piqued my interest. But the part of the problem too is that we, are not problem, but we've got quite a bit. And actually, are you going to AppSec USA? Are you? What's the deal there?
What's the deal there? People keep asking me this. Global AppSec DC. Yes.
I get asked about your itinerary too, man. People just assume like we're always going to be at the same place together. So I've gotten asked in this last week like 5 or 6 times, like, is Seth coming? And I'm like, as far as I know, no, he's not going to that. But maybe ask him.
Yeah.
No, but yeah.
Yeah.
Peer pressure.
Yeah. Peer pressure. I'm not sure right now. Like Haddix is asking if he wants to jump on, if we want an impromptu guest, by the way. As far as Global AppSec DC, it's up in the air, right? Like with the travel to Seattle, I wasn't going to make it out to DC just based on being at LastCon like the couple days before and family pressures and things like that. But now that that's freed up, it's in the mix again. So unclear is basically where I'm at right now. I haven't made a call one way or another, but it would be good to see everyone. Outside of that, I mean, I'll be happy to have Haddix on. We were already talking about his cloud recon tool, so it would be good to at least touch bases there with him.
I'm sending in an email right now.
Sure. Sweet. Outside of that, this last weekend, Ken and I were at Texas Cyber Summit. It was I did a session on Saturday, and I wanted to talk about this for a second, Ken, on like, I wasn't sure how it was going to be attended. Like, we've never been to Texas Cyber Summit before. It's a different conference. Seems to be geared more towards kind of like middle management and, tool vendors and other things right there. There was some good talks that went on. And I did see some people like Short Stack, like Whitney from Hacker Tracker. Outside of that, though, I ran a session on Saturday afternoon. I thought it was going to be just completely dead because, right, like Saturday afternoon conference ends Saturday, like right after the session is done. And I ended up having like 10 to 12 people that showed up to talk secure code review. And I mean, honestly, man, it was a really good session. Like there was a lot of people that were doing code review, trying to build AppSec practices and ProdSec practices. Really good questions, very good insights into like current state of AppSec. They had a lot of questions around like threat modeling, how do you know what you should analyze, what code you should be looking at, and then how to approach it. So I was actually pretty energized after that, considering where things were at on walking around the conference on Saturday as people were leaving. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was an interesting one.
Yeah, I know it was just like you gave that talk, and it just felt like kind of disjointed as far as like attendees, like technical to what management. And I know conferences try to cover that full gamut, but it doesn't always happen the way that you expect. So
it was a nice hotel, nice venue, but yeah, it was I don't know, man. It was I couldn't put my finger on exactly who it was catering to, or like what genre of security, I guess, would be the better way of saying that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because there were some pretty technical talks. There were a lot of not technical. I'm saying like there was a mix of technical, executive. There was like you said, a lot of vendors. It wasn't like bad or anything like that. It was like kind of, it's just different. It's just different. I haven't been to a conference like that in a while. So anyways, it was fun. I mean, we did it. It was tough in a sense, because it was a brand new talk. For those who don't know, like when you I gave a brand new talk, something I'd never given before. And when you build a new talk, typically you do that through, Seth, you and I talked about this. I mean, we both kind of do it this way, which is you workshop it through meetups, and then you go to maybe like a little bit larger of venues, but nothing too huge, until like you've chopped it up and pieced it back together and edited and, gotten it to like, where, like, what to say to get what reaction to, because it is a presentation. It is a demonstration. It's as much performance as it is informative. At least that's how I look at it. Right. So there is a bit of just trying to fine tune everything. And that can take up to a year, is what Seth and I I think mutually agreed upon, is it can take up to it. Like, so if today I wanted to build a talk and in a year give it, or even, say 9 months to 12 months from now at like a big stage conference, like, like a DEF CON or an RSA or whatever, like big crowds, it's got to go through that cycle. So anyways, I didn't do any of that. I just gave the talk and I was so happy because the turnout was a little bit on the smaller end. And I was actually really, because my biggest fear, and I was telling you this, was that it would be packed and then it'd be like, oh my God, I'm giving this talk for the first time. So it worked out well. But and the crowd was good and everything. But yeah. So anyways, we have Jason waiting for us if we want to pull Jason in, because it's funny because Jason doesn't know this, but we were literally just finding the link to his Cloud Recon tool so we could talk about it today. So really apropos that he tended to want to join. So really cool.
Yeah. Hey, Jason.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for volunteering to swing in last minute. Right?
No worries. Someone posted the show on Twitter or on X or whatever, and I was like, oh shit, let's go and see what they're doing. So
sweet.
Yeah. Sweet.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, there was a couple things like Ked was saying, like the Cloud Recon stuff. You wondered how that tool came about, and it's been a while. I think the last time that we had you on, you were one of our first guests, Jason.
It was a long time ago. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I want to say it was, within the first 10 episodes, right?
Yeah, it was very early. You guys didn't have a logo yet. You were still working out audio issues. It was great.
Yeah. Yep. Episode 9. You. Wow. Jerry, Neil, right? Like, yeah, it was good times though, right? Yeah, we figured a few things out, not many since then, but a few things, right? Like,
yeah,
a couple things.
It's a continual learning process to make content for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we had recommendations even this week, right? Talking to somebody else, right, about like different things that we could do. So
yeah,
but
they wanted to see more about Roth IRAs and 401ks and
yeah, there you go. Yeah. We're gonna switch over to the Crocs and socks of finance and right, like
okay.
that's
Not a
complete
specialty of
shift.
mine. Yeah.
No,
No.
come on.
No.
That's what is it? Diamond hands, right? Like,
Yeah.
you just got to hold.
Luckily, my wife's an accountant, so she takes care of all that stuff. So
Oh man, yeah, that's some
Yeah.
good inside help, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Well, okay, so there's a couple things, right? Like, I mean, right off the bat, we talked at DEF CON a little bit about you coming on. Like, great job there. Like, I know you were given like 4 or 5 different talks between AppSec, CloudSec, like all the different villages.
Yeah.
How was your experience there? Like, would you do that again? Like, putting out so much, content during during those 3-4 days.
Yeah. I don't know if I do it again, honestly. I'm definitely not planning on doing it next year. So I did seven talks total, I think, over the week. And then like I think a couple panels too. And I think I did it, because my company I'm with right now, ButtoBot, like we don't have like a big presence or anything like that, right? So, like if I can get in and speak, it's a good representation for us and stuff like that. And so I did it for that. And then I also every once in a while get a really big bug up my butt feeling like the younger hackers are outpacing me. And I kind of want to like just make sure I still got it, is kind of the feeling. And so, so if you are out there doing and releasing and speaking and there's good feedback about it, then I feel like I'm still part of the game. So, but would I do it again? No, it was too much. It was way too much. No,
yeah. That's always, I mean, I know Ken feels the same thing, right? Like there's so much time that you have to put into it to each of the different talks. And especially if you've got like different topics that you're going across the different, and then you're, all the different coordinators that you're dealing with. You end up living in Vegas for a week and a half, right? Like, which is not, I would not recommend that to anyone, right? Especially being on the strip, right?
Yeah. I don't mind Vegas as much as other people. Like, I mean, like my form of ADHD, like overstimulation, is actually my happy place. So like the lights and all that stuff is like it's great for me. But yeah, it's dry and it's expensive, and being away from your family that long too is a hard deal. So
yep. And that's traditionally where I run into it is, after 3 or 4 days, family's like, when are you coming back? And I'm like, another week. And
yeah, for sure.
hard
that daddy, when are you coming home call, or that honey, when are you coming home call is the hard one. Like,
yeah, for sure. Sweet.
About to get less difficult for my family because every time I come home, I seem to give them some kind of thing I picked up. It doesn't necessarily hit me, but I swear every time I come home, I like pass along some cold or flu to them. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's I've built it into the travel threat model to quarantine myself for a couple of days after, because it's like you'll get a flu, you'll get a stomach bug, you'll get something, and it's like, oh no, I don't want to wreck the family. So
yeah, makes sense.
You're definitely smarter than I haven't quarantined at all. That's probably the issue.
Luckily, I have the nerd basement. The nerd basement, like I can just go down there and stay down there for a couple days, and we're okay. So
nice. Yeah, I like the DEF CON badges in the background there too.
Thanks, man.
Very extensive.
That's good stuff. So along those lines, though, right? 7 talks. Which one was your favorite? What was the one that you felt the best about?
I think it was the Cloud Recon tool that we released that you guys were alluding to. So, and I think it's gone slept on a little bit, just because we only presented it at 2 places, and but I mean the idea around the tool is so a buddy of mine, Gunnar, and I are heavy into bug bounty, heavy into AppSec, and red teaming. And so, basically when you're looking holistically in a red team engagement or a bug bounty hunt at a wide scope company, like a company who has lots of external assets, there's 2 primary places where you're going to look for assets of theirs. One is their owned IP space, which is their ASNs, usually, if they're large enough to be assigned an autonomous system number. And the other one is their cloud space. But there's no great way to say, hey, what is what is like Tesla.com's complete cloud presence, right? There's no tool unless you work there to get it, right? And so the thing that most bug bounty hunters have been doing is creating tool sets to scan the entire internet using either forward or reverse DNS information or certificate metadata. So these are things like when you have an SSL certificate for a website and you make it in the OU or the SN or the SAN, you put the domain of your company, right? Even if it's a self-signed cert, you put the domain, right? And so the easy way to do this is to scan the entire Amazon range. Let's just take Amazon for example, right? Which is millions of IPs, but scan everyone at an IP level, make sure they're up, and then connect to them via SSL on the IP level. And then when they give you back, when they connect via SSL, when they give you back the cert, check the cert metadata and see what domains are in that cert. And then you can associate that server to a company that you're targeting, like Tesla or something like that. Now, to do that for the entire cloud range of Amazon with a regular port scanner and then feeding that to other stuff, it takes a long time, a long time. And we wanted to get to the point where we could find what we call ephemeral assets, right? So like dev instances of software that get brought up in the cloud and brought down really quickly, integration infrastructure that gets brought off and brought down really quickly to do like one operation on the internet and that gets brought down, either via like, some kind of containerization or something like that. Things that were only on the internet for blips of a second. We call this ephemeral assets, basically. And so there's been a lot of success in the bug bounty industry on finding these things if you can build the tooling to do it, but it's all been very hush-hush for a long time. Like that tool set has been a superpower basically for a lot of people. So Gunnar and I wanted to build a version for everybody. So we built a tool called Cloud Recon, and it is just fast as all hell. So it'll do exactly what I talked about. You give it any IP range. So it's not just for the cloud. There's other uses for it too, but we primarily use it for the cloud. We can scan all of the clouds, Google or GCP, Azure, AWS, DigitalOcean, and some others in just a little bit over 2 hours, the entire range, all certificate metadata, and dump it to a text file. And then you can just grab the text file for your target, Tesla.com, TeslaMotors.com, whatever. And that'll tell you the associated servers that they have on the internet. And a lot of times, as you guys are aware, when you're building test infrastructure or whatever, you'll put internal host names in that certificate metadata as well, because you'll use the same certificate, or you'll use one certificate for all your sites, which if I find that one certificate, now I'll have a listing of all of your domains as well, your subdomains for your site. So it's a really great reconnaissance tool. It scans, and if you run 2 or 3 instances of this on different VPSs, which the VPSs we're running on are not expensive, they're like $20 a month VPSs. You can have a live listing of your target as soon as they bring something up. As soon as some certificate shows up on the internet, you'll get messaged instantly, and you can go after it. So.
Sweet. Well, and that was going to be my question: is like the continuous monitoring, right? Like a couple hours feels like it's that's a doable. Hey, I just am running this over and over with a specific list of these targets, right? What is it that I'm interested in? I mean, for years we've said this, right? That you put anything online and it scans within minutes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
People are looking at some of this, right? Like, sweet. Like if you had some good success then and getting some good bugs out of it or getting some good.
I mean, I think one of the bigger ones wasn't me, it was Shubs from AssetNote, because he's had this tech for quite a while. But Slack, I think, as a story I tell in the presentation, they had some integration servers that were going up and down, and Shubs had noticed them in his continuous monitoring, and then he'd go visit them and they weren't there anymore, and he's like, what is this? And then he'd have to catch them at a certain point of the day. My stuff hasn't been from the continuous monitoring, because I've been doing a lot of red teaming. It's been really valuable in the red teaming stuff. So getting internal host names, getting just like shadow IT that people left out and are referenced in certificates, like also like part of the thing that we do is we provide that list to the customer of like everything we can find for them as part of the red team service. And they're just like, no, I mean, normally, I mean, you guys are used to this, right? They're flabbergasted about the kind of stuff that we find on the internet that they had no idea was there. They're like, yeah, we had no idea this infrastructure was still out there, especially for acquisitions. So part of our process is looking at their acquisitions and their investitures, and when we run this against those, they have assumed that their IT staff has taken all of that infrastructure down for that previous company that they acquired, and then invariably there is still a lot out there with data on it that they are on the hook for, but they didn't know was out there. So
Nice.
At GitHub we had a red team doing something similar like that, but meaning I don't. Well, the tool, I don't know how I don't really remember how it worked, but it was the same concept in the sense that, like, I think it was like a Slack hook. So if any new domain popped up, any new whatever something service, it would pop into Slack and say, hey, here's your new stuff that just propped up. And that was helpful. I maybe they're doing it the same way, maybe they're doing something different. Either way, it was very helpful, because that was from a bug bounty perspective, it's not fun to like find out about new assets through your bug bounty program.
Yeah, it's not great.
Right?
It's not.
Yeah, I mean, you can hook our tool up to Project Discovery's Notify tool, which is just a harness to message people on Slack and Discord, and you can hook any command line tool up to it. And so you can do that, and when it finds a new asset, it'll message you. So
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, it's super useful. I see that as like a, one of those expansions on not just in the bug bounty space, but like you were saying, the red team space, or like even from a, defender space, like blue team, like we should be running this constantly. If we're not, there's going to be those gaps that pop up.
The other one we did at Black Hat Arsenal was called Easy ESAM, which is more it's more using different it's using different techniques than the Cloud Scan stuff, Cloud Recon stuff, but it's more formulated for that actually. So it's literally one script that you run. It's made for IT people, not for security people, not for bug bounty people, but it uses a combination of Project Discovery tools, some scripting that we did, and you run one script and it gives you basically a spreadsheet of all your assets using the common asset enumeration techniques that bug bounty hunters use. And so really it's the beginning of, when I talk to people about this tool, it's not for bug bounty hunters, not for security people, it's for IT to get a handle on what they have out on the internet. And that always starts every company I've worked with making an asset inventory, at least an external asset inventory. It starts with a spreadsheet, right? Like no one's using a giant platform to start off, right? It's usually a spreadsheet to start off. And then it's like, okay, if we have a massive infrastructure, maybe we'll buy an enterprise level external asset management app, or we'll use one of the frameworks that ties everything together, like Exonius or JupyterOne or something like that. But in the beginning, just to get a feel, you can run this tool and get a spreadsheet, and it has all of your assets. It has their tech stack. It has the titles of the pages. You can take screenshots of everything, and it just gets you started with kind of external asset discovery.
Mm-hmm. And I was trying to find, is that in your GitHub repository, or where's that one actually at?
It's not mine. So Gunnar is, somewhat new to the scene, so we put everything on his repo so he could get his name out there. I'll send you the links.
I've got him up.
Yeah,
there
Golden.
We go. Easy. Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll post that one out really quick too.
Yeah.
Yep. Sweet. Yeah. Well,
that's
good.
That was the other one we did. Did some panels and red teaming, war stories. So just like your, when you meet up with friends and have a beer, like you tell your good stories, and that was fun. And then we did a new version of parameter data, which was called sus params, and that was the other big one we did. So
yeah.
Okay, so more about that.
Yeah, Ken was. I was just gonna ask the same thing. So let's talk about
sorry. Yeah, sorry. I got excited hearing that. That sounds cool.
No worries. Okay, so about 5 years ago, when I was working at BugCrowd, I approached BugCrowd while I was an employee to do a research project with them on parameter data. And so my thesis was that across vulnerability types, they tend to, at least in the English language, they tend to present in similar types of parameter names or input names, route names. And so I said, okay, I went to our data scientist and I said, okay, I don't want to docs our customers, right? So what I need you to do is to run the entire submission database, and what I need is type of bug and parameter or route only from type of bug. So they dumped that for me. And then I was able to look at that and run, just some quick statistics on what were the top vulnerable parameters for each type of bug class. And so that we called Hunt, and we released it at DEF CON.
Yep.
Now, that was just the bug crowd data set. But it was one of the largest data sets I knew to work with, because nobody else has that much vulnerability data in one place, really. Unless you're a dynamic scanning company that's in the cloud, that's the only other company, I think, type of company I can think of that would have that much vulnerability data. And so we released that, and the idea is that when you're testing, like you, Seth, and you, Seth, how many times have you worked with a junior and they're just like, oh yeah, how do you know that vulnerability is there? And you're like, I've done it for 15 years. Like,
Yep.
And what I was trying to think of is like, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? Like, to me, it's like, yeah, I just know because I've been doing it. But what it comes down to is actually, oh, I've seen that parameter before. And I know that parameter or that route or that function type is usually vulnerable, or it's not usually, but it can be vulnerable to this thing. And that's that inherent learned thing. Like, Ken, you run through this too, right? I mean, you yeah. I mean, so what this tool did, Hunt, was it would just pop up in your burp and be like, hey, this parameter redirect. Like, I mean, this is a stupid one because it makes syntactically sense, but usually it can be subject to redirect vulnerabilities, right? Or SSRF, server-side request forgery, because it deals with a library that has to deal with a URL. And our brains, having done this for a long time, we're like, yeah, but a new person, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Cool, right? So you're trying to short circuit that learning cycle. So we did that many years ago, and it worked out really well. And then I don't want to bring any drama on the show, but then another project came out, which basically ripped off our list and called it their own project. Verbatim, same parameters that we released in our data set. And so Gunnar and I will we didn't want to fight with that person anymore. And so we were like, well, whatever, we'll just make a better data set. So this year we went through and parsed everything from Hacktivity on HackerOne's timeline of disclosed vulnerabilities. We pulled a large number of web bugs from CVE data, and we parsed out their paths and parameters. And then we were in the middle of doing XSS.com for just XSS vulnerabilities, and we reran. We did it with some AI this time, which was super dope. Some AI parsers, and we released a new data set. And so that data set should be under susparams under Gunnar as well. Yep. And we worked with the tool author. Have you guys heard of Gap before?
I have not. No.
Cool. So Gap is by a guy named XML Hacker. He's in the bug bounty and kind of app hacking kind of community. He writes a bunch of tools, but one of them is called Gap. And what Gap does is it basically will parse all JavaScript, not only from JavaScript files when you see them through burp, but also inline JavaScript, basically parsing out paths and routes from JavaScript files. So this is things like relative URLs, non-relative URLs, like concatenated paths with plus signs and stuff like that between stuff. Has a really amazing regex. A lot of people use a tool called Link Finder to do this. It's very common, but it's on the command line. XML Hacker has built an extension in burp called Gap that does it automatically, and its power is that most of those other tools are just looking at .js files. His tool will look at all inline JavaScript. And so it basically tells you all the paths, which is a tremendous amount of advantage when you're in bug bounty hunting. Now, he added our hunt data, our sus parameters, into Gap. So now there's another section in Gap that pops up and it says, hey, on this page, we saw this parameter, or on this request, we saw this parameter. You might want to check it for this type of vulnerability. So we worked with him to put that in his tool. And so it'll be right inside your burp suite. So that one was also really dope. It's more of like a data research project, but I've had so many people tell me that it helped them kind of learn contextually where vulnerabilities are and how to look for them and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
There's that
I
word
mean,
again.
yeah, context, but also, right, like we always talk about that spidey sense, right? Like you were looking
Mhm.
at code. It's the same sort of thing,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
we look at code and we see something, we're like, ooh, that's
yeah,
weird, right?
yeah.
Like, but it all comes back to function names, parameter names,
Yep.
variable names, right?
Yep.
Like,
The way a code
Yeah.
block looks is structured, like, yeah, for sure.
yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
comments,
Seth and
whatever it
I
is, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
had a long conversation at Texas Cyber Summit about that, about how some similarities between how the human brain works when it comes to, because that's really what it is, right? Pattern analysis and
Mhm.
then anti-pattern recognition. It's a lot of that, and that part
Yeah.
of the brain, that's that one specific bit is the thing I think LLMs are starting to replicate. So it's pretty interesting to just pattern recognition and whatnot and similarities.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, it's interesting to hear because from an attacker perspective, seeing what routes are available, seeing what parameter names, like, and having the data to kind of provably say, hey, the probability of these classifications of vulnerabilities in these parameter names is like risky, so I'm going to test it. But from like a defensive standpoint, just having the knowledge of what those markers are and what they should look like, and then um, what to throw at those things,
Yeah.
based off of what classes of vulnerabilities. It's all very, very super interesting. But again, I think it's you mentioned context. I think it's
Yep.
building upon the context of the application you're working in. So, anyways,
Yep.
we really could spend the entire remainder of this episode and then 4 more hours just going nonstop on that. So I
No, no
don't
worries.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That
it's
we got.
it's all very interesting because I think why I'm saying this is I do see this security shift where there's this recognition of what's actually, and I was having this long conversation with Andrew Wilson. It's a similar conversation I'm having with you guys where
Yeah.
he's writing a thesis where he's trying to understand how the human brain performs that pattern recognition when it comes to testing, like pen testing specifically. And anyways, it's all pretty interesting. I think there's recognition that like there are parts of our brains that are like doing things in a certain way, and we should as an industry move in a different direction than what we've done previously to secure things. But anyways, that's just going off the rails there. So I'll bring it all
I mean,
back in.
the whole future of methodology, the way we test, the tools that empower us to do our testing is going to change with the advent of consumer level AI right now. It's already
Yep.
changing my testing methodology. Like, I talked to you about whenever I see an API now, or I have like, JavaScript with like routes of API calls in it right now, I feed it to a custom, script that I have that parses it with ChatGPT 4. It will spit out all the routes for me. It will tell me which ones require authentication, which ones don't. It will, based on the susparam data, tell me about which vulnerabilities I should test. For that, it cross-references with the framework that it's built in and gives me like a little cheat sheet as to like input injection vulnerabilities with that specific framework. And I have to write that giant context, that system prompt, right? And I have to set the temperature. But after I do that, it's my oracle for testing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Are you using? Sorry, yeah, I don't want to. I don't know what there's no agenda. So you know what? I'll ask. Are you
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
anything like LangChain or are you using your own vector database at all to like contextually compress and retrieve documents, or is it just kind of building out the prompts, setting the temperatures, the model names, and all that, and then
So
passing it passing it along?
I was going down that route of building my own LangChain instance and putting everything in there. But I actually, like, halfway through that, there was many consumer tools that came out that are hosted in the cloud that can keep that infrastructure up better than I can, who are better at AI than I am, at least at a code level. I'm really good at prompt engineering and security, but not necessarily the data science part that comes along with AI. And so I have been using a front end called Typing Mind. Have you guys heard of this before? So it's
No.
indie developer, and he built a front end for the ChatGPT API, which includes the option to upload files into a vector database.
Ooh,
And
nice.
and so I can build the persona, store the system prompt persona, set the temperature for the API, do custom coding, enable plugins through his front end, and then upload documents to that specific persona. and it will query, those words first in the, in the chaining.
Okay, so this sounds like Baseplate, which I don't know if you've seen that one. I've used Baseplate
Yeah.
before, and
Yeah.
that's like a super simple way to get up. And I say
Yeah.
super simple. None of it's super simple, right? But
Yeah.
it's simpler than, like you said, maintaining infrastructure and all that. And was
Yeah.
like I actually recommended in that talk I gave last week at Texas Cyber Summit that people start there, because to your point, like it gets a bit it gets
Yeah.
to appear pretty heavy, and if you
Yeah.
can like start with something like that, it gives you a better understanding of at a high level what's going on before you really start to delve into the weeds. Also, there's
Yeah.
this other one I wanted to run by you too, called I saw this. Oh, sorry, I put streaming in there. But anyways, it's called Magentic. Definitely pretty cool because it makes it basically you use decorators to specify bits of your code that you want to
Oh, that's
do
cool.
whatever. Like it. Yeah, it's pretty neat. So
Yeah, I mean, I will go back to building my own infrastructure pretty soon, but in the case I needed it, it was good enough to use Typing Mind. The first thing I needed it for was so for Buttobot, we do a lot of adversarial emulation as well as simulation. And so for the emulation stuff, I had this dream in my head of being able to feed an LLM breach articles on an industry, and for it to parse all that out into a MITRE attack path and TTPs related based on MITRE attack, so that we could make sure that we were hitting the right notes in the emulation for the customer we were working with. And so that I was able to do just with a Typing Mind. So I kind of abandoned doing my own thing like really quickly. And so like I just have a script that pulls down all the articles about any threat actor or any attack against an industry, and then it will aggregate that and turn it into a plan, and just to make sure that we test those things. So.
that is so awesome. Yeah, man. Like that, because so I really do like the idea of just getting started very quickly with something like that. Because if you were to tell someone like, how do I get started? And they've got to like, okay, I don't know about you, but when I was going down the rabbit hole of trying to like figure out how this all works and everything, it was ridiculously bad because what has happened or seemingly happened from my perspective. I don't know if this is true, but it seems like because AI is so hot and people want clicks, there's about 1 billion articles and videos that are all surface level, don't really do much, don't really dig into the weeds, but like it's like the same code snippet with maybe a little bit of a change here and there. And it's just all so cursory. They never really get into the weeds, or the articles do, but it's very hard to sort through all of that stuff to find good articles that are actually helpful. What was your
Yeah.
experience digging in here? Was it similar, or was it easier for you
Learning
to
the
like
AI
find relevant stuff?
or finding the security data? Which one?
No. Learning AI, like the
Oh,
material to
yeah.
actually do it at a more comprehensive level than
Yeah.
yeah.
It is. You're right. It is you're very drowned in like use this prompt to like do this thing, right? And it's like, okay, that's not the level I was looking for. I mean, I just found like some creators. It sucks that like the whole world's on YouTube. That's a place to learn. But I found most of the creators I was looking for talking about LangChain and some of these tools as well on YouTube. I am also blessed to know some people like Dan Miesler, and Dan and I talk every week just as friends. But we often end up talking about ways to use AI to expand research or security or anything really. Dan's more in the kick of using AI to change the world at a fundamental level and how we learn and interact as humans. I tend to focus more on security. You want to hear another cool one?
He's more
So
philosophical. Yes, yeah.
yeah, so the one I'm working on right now has a whole data set both transcribed from YouTube and hard documents that I filled up with basically what I call like the OpenSock stack, right? So things like Zeek and Moloch and Canary OS Query, Securata, Yura, Graylog, Velociraptor, all these open source defense detection engineering SOC tools. And I ask AI to create, based on the TTPs that we have for the threat actors now, open source rules and strategies using the OpenStack security data, and it does a fucking fantastic. Oh, I'm sorry, I cursed on your show. My bad.
Dude, don't fucking worry about it.
It does a fantastic job of getting you started. Now, will it give you something you're going to run in production? No, but it gives you a fantastic idea of how you should defend against different attacker strategies. And this will be the next version of some of our reports. Actually, in our red team reports, we want to go beyond just throwing up a red team report on your desk and being like, okay, we're done. We want to give you all of the ammo. At least, I want our defense and detection engineering sections to be longer than the vulnerability report in our red team tests.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going for our stuff at ButterBot.
Dude, that's, yeah. Honestly, this is exactly the discussion that Ken and I have been having over the last, couple of months around AI, is that, it's not going to replace us. It's going to make us better, and it's going to speed up, getting to the point that we need to generate that sort of content. Right.
Yeah.
To that point, right? That's one of the discussions that we've been having internally, is beefing up the recommendation section on a code review, on the pen test reports, and using AI to do that, because the recommendations that come out of there they're bad, right?
Yeah. Bad. Yeah.
But,
so it's good. It's good stuff. It's a whole new world where, if you think about it, we didn't have this 7 months ago, right? We are very much in the infancy of what this can do. We're still in consumer AI land, I like to call it, right? It's everybody's getting their hands on it, figuring out how it works. Just wait a year. Wait to see what defensive technology, like code auditing looks like, offense looks like in a year. I'm super excited. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
I
got put in touch with the recommendation. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was the recommendation, was if you're not starting to look at it, you need to be, right? Yeah. Because in a year, you're going to be left behind if you're still doing the same thing you were in 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ken, sorry about that.
Oh, no, actually, I forget what I was saying. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, you're on. Yeah, no, that's all right. So actually, let me just, because there was a statement in the chat that this isn't what I was going to say, but since we're looking at it, it says AI suggests vulnerable libraries very often. This was my response. I said depends on a lot of factors, right? Not just your LLM, but what embeddings you're using, and what model names or model types you're using, what prompt technology you're using, what chains you're using, how you're vectorizing your data. There are such to say, because the question was, well, I'm on ChatGPT 3.5, which LLM are you on? It's not really a thing of. So first of all, I've experimented with multiple LLMs, but I think that here's what my hypothesis is, and I don't know if this is true, but whenever I see criticisms of AI and LLMs, when I dig into it, it's usually I went to the website, I tried using either ChatGPT in the what they give on the screen, right? As well as maybe some of the APIs of something like OpenAI or Bard or something like that, right? But actually, I don't think I've met anybody who's done much with Bard. But anyways, that's usually what it is. Whereas there's this whole other thing that needs to be said, which is there's a whole world out there, as Jason just said, that's 7 to 9 months, and we're in our infancy, and there's all these tool sets being built and all these different options that you have to piece together all these different components. And so that's what you should be focusing on if you want to understand LLMs, but also if you want to try and refine your data set to get the right answers. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you go right to a website and start typing things in, expect correct answers, you're doing it wrong. Totally doing it wrong. There's a lot that you have to do on your end to make those answers more accurate, to include providing feedback when you receive those answers on how well they responded as well. So scoring and all that. So anyways, there's a lot that goes into it. It's a complicated, it's a question that you've asked and that has been asked that is a very, complex answer or nuanced answer. So what do you guys think on that?
It's definitely why we're not out of a job anytime soon, right? Because we still carry a lot of the context. And if you think about the data sets the LLMs train on as well, it's the publicly available data, but not all context and creativity of the human race has been captured on the internet, right? Where it got its data set. So we're not out of a job or anything like that. But how do you mitigate? How do you mitigate against something like that? Well, you give it all the context in the world. In the system prompt, you tell it that you're a security expert who cares about finding the answers to the security questions I'm going to ask you, as well as you pay special attention to libraries that don't have vulnerabilities, using frameworks that are secure by default, focus on input validation, output encoding. Like, you set the context for the bot that you want, and then you ask it the questions, and then you always validate. Always, always, always validate at the end. You never use raw. If you just go to ChatGPT and you're like, hey, like, write this piece of code, it's going to do the same thing that any human would do. It's going to get the data that was from Stack Overflow, right? Which is 90% of the time using vulnerable code, right? But if you tell it, hey, you're a security expert, you focus on React, here are the common things that are wrong with React based on my context, here are the things I'm looking for in this code, here are some examples, here are some libraries that we choose to use a lot of times for security. You feed it with some documents, some presentations about React security, and then you ask it, you're like, okay, let's write a piece of code. It's like, it does a pretty good job, honestly.
Yeah, that's how chains work, right? You retrieve the contextually relevant information from your database, which is your vector database. It's returned in the form of what they call documents, but it's basically snippets, just like Jason just said. And then you feed in the top. You can fiddle a lot with that too. Like, how many documents do you want to return? What amount of similarity, like what's the metric for similarity search? There's a lot of different little variables that go into that. And so you can tune as you wish to get back the right information. And then it's literally chaining those retrieved bit of information on top of the LLM so that it looks at that piece of information first before it answers the question using its own data set. And then there's some other bits. There's a lot of other nuances that go there, but yeah, it's very, very flexible. Very, And also, Jason, I was going to mention this. So this is what I had forgotten. I was going to say is, like, I was telling Seth this kind of more privately, but I was sent. You get it through advisors and whatnot. You get like contacts. So I went to about 3 different deep learning, machine learning, neural network experts, and all of them had the same thing happen to them, which was they went down this road like in the mid 2015, 2016, started down the route, got pretty far. It was okay what they built, hired one guy, had hired a couple PhDs, all this great stuff to build their own ML and deep learning. And then, ChatGPT came out, and then all of these other tools, this ecosystem of tool sets around LLMs, and then the explosion that we've seen. And so what's kind of interesting is that all 3 experts were like ditching what they were already working on, had already built, because they're like, it's not as good as what's now available. And also they are themselves catching up on what tool chains are in this ecosystem available, tool chains that are available in the ecosystem to build this stuff. So it's really the early days. And
I mean, spicy take is all the professionals in machine learning and AI that I know who are like academic focused, they hate it. They hate it because they worked for 15 years to do something special, and then OpenAI came out with a consumer level version of it and bypassed all of that immediately. And it's not the way they thought the world would play out. And they refuse to accept that it can be valuable too in a lot of cases. I've met security people, a lot of security people who are like, it's trash. And I'm like, I can prove to you it's not trash. It's changing the world right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you were, no, it's trash. It's like, like it's not doing it the way it's supposed to be doing it. It gives, like, a lot of feedback is it gives you errors. You can't trust it. That's like humans give you errors and you can't trust humans, but we make that work every day. Like,
thank you. How about your SaaS tools? Or your those fucking are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I met, I don't want to put him on blast, but I met this really, really, really influential, famous hacker I look up to at the Black Hat C system. That's sitting at the same table with him. And I was talking to him about some of this research I was doing, and he just poo-pooed on AI, on consumer level AI for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, dude, listen, man, like, I respect you and I think the world of you, but you're wrong. Like, this is changing the world, and in ways that I can prove to you right now. It's making security better. It's making the world better. And I'm sorry that it's not the future that you saw for ML and AI. And I'm sorry that it's not perfect in the way that you want it to be. But like, you got to get with it, man, because you're going to miss the boat. You're going to miss the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You take advantage of the hype cycle when it happens, right? The improvement just over the last, to your point, like just over the last 2 to 3 months has been amazing. Like, think about where we're going to be in a year. And if you're that tied to a specific model or specific like ML process, because it was academically like whatever sound, you're going to be left behind, right? That's it.
Yeah. And I'll say this though, even if you're not going to use it for like anything functional, you should as a security practitioner definitely start digging in, because like even that what is it, Magentic or whatever I put in there, that's specifically so that web apps can start like easily building LLMs. So hear me out here, if you're in an AppSec or ProdSec role, whatever you want to call it, you're probably going to come across this. And so why am I saying this? Because as I have built more tooling around AI, dude, it's actually funny because like I start realizing, oh God, there's like a potential for a security issue there. There's a potential for a security issue there. It's the same thing as whenever you write code in like a language, or you start building a web app in a certain framework, like you start to learn all the like dark corners, and you become kind of really knowledgeable in where things can go wrong just from having built in it. And it's the same thing with AI. So I'd encourage folks to just, even if you think it's horseshit, like prove it, like go use it, and then teacher. And by the way, next week, Seth, I'm going to be at OWASP Nova, where yes, just start using GitHubs. I'm going to be at OWASP Nova. I'm going to walk through some of this with code samples. So maybe I'll share on this podcast. Some of that stuff.
No, that would be amazing, because I think there's just a general interest in how someone in the security space, especially security engineers that haven't dealt with AI before, like how they can start using it, right? They have that consumer, I go ask ChatGPT a couple of things, but taking that next step is I'm seeing a lot of mid-level junior people as are like in the space just not know where to go, right? Not know where to start with it.
Even if
hey, by the way,
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say, even if you step back away from security, right? I'll give some very personal examples. So, one of my kids was having some mental health issues over the past year, and we had been to like a whole bunch of specialists, and you never want to take AI's advice for medical stuff, right? But it has trained on the whole corpus of human writing on the internet, right? That data set up to 2021. And there were just a whole bunch of terms that these doctors kept on using that I had no freaking clue what were when they were talking about mental health with adolescents. And so I wrote the whole context without personal data about what we were going through. I obfuscated it to a level I felt comfortable with. And then I started asking it as a trusted advisor and a diagnostician, like what they thought about this, what these terms meant, what the different treatment options are that the doctors were telling us about. And it walked me through exactly what everything was. Like here's a concrete example. I didn't know what an inpatient versus outpatient youth-based mental health program looked like for an adolescent. I had no idea what that looked like. So I asked it. I gave it all this context, and I said, what does that look like for this age range? And it walked me through it day to day. Here's what your child will experience. Here's what like it'll do. Like, here's the benefits. Here's the drawbacks, like all this stuff. And that made me and my wife very comfortable with the process of what was going. And we didn't have to go to the doctor to ask them those dumb questions. We asked the AI, and it had trained on descriptions of what this kind of stuff was like. So there's that. Other concrete examples for sysadmins, I use ChatGPT on the daily to drive PowerShell scripts for red teaming. Like, it writes some badass PowerShell scripts. Like, it knows PowerShell inside and out because the data has been out there for years, right? So when I need to do stuff with red teaming that invokes certain processes or keeps things in memories or just does simple operations to extend Cobalt Strike or any C2 that I'm using, it can help me with that instantly. It is amazing. So two concrete examples of how I've used it for different stuff.
Yeah. And that, I mean, in the chat, right, like somebody was asking about smart IDEs, right? And, it goes to that, right? Like just, we've talked about Copilot a whole bunch, right? Which is, it's just a code LLM is what it boils down to. and it gives you code completion. It'll build stuff for you. That's already changed, like personally, my like daily life on how I code, because I've become super dependent on that for, hey, it's speeding me up. It's not writing the code, like all of the code and completing it, but it's giving you enough of the context to actually use it, right? Like to actually, speed up my life and make it easier to generate what I want to do. And to your point, like the PowerShell stuff is there. I know, talking with friends in like the medical space as well, exactly what you're speaking to, right? The recommendations that come out of it, it's very similar to what we're seeing there, right? Like, oh, what sort of drug would you recommend if you were an expert in, in actually like whatever space that is.
Yeah.
And it,
yeah. And in those scenarios, you have to be triple checking everything. And again, it's trained on the corpus of human knowledge on the internet. So, I read this great contextual article about diagnosticians using it in the medical field, but then some intern coming straight out of college, having read some paper somewhere that wasn't in the data set, recommending a treatment that wasn't in it, and it wasn't in its list. And it's like, yeah, of course, like we're still the ultimate authorities. We're still coming out with the new research. We're not to the point yet where, well, a couple of new research pieces have come out from AI, but we're not to the point where this thing is running everything yet. It is what I call it as a trusted advisor, an oracle, maybe a super intern. But it's not something you need to take at face value or is Skynet yet. So
yeah.
I will say, like, my engineers, that we've all kind of embraced using Copilot in the IDE, but we had a team summit last week, and we are all sitting in this conference room. We were just writing code, talking, and we got on the subject, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it's pretty great, it's to a degree, but at the same time, there's these weird things that happen where, and I've experienced this too, where the code looks so correct at first, you're like, yeah, okay, autocomplete." And then you go to run it, and there's like something that's off, and it actually becomes pretty hard to troubleshoot, because when you write every line of code yourself and you're thinking through what it's doing, it's one thing. When you're just kind of like, oh yeah, that paragraph of code looks about right, that block of code, cool. And then you're like, oh shit, I don't like what's going on here. So sometimes it can actually make troubleshooting a little bit more difficult at first. That having been said, still does help. Obviously, I mean, like,
to be honest,
if you're like me and you navigate. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, if you're like, if you're a polyglot, right? You're navigating through a lot of different code. It's pretty nice to just be like, I don't remember how to do this simple thing in this language. Like, what's the way to do that with an array or an index or whatever it might be?
Yeah, my methodology. Well, a couple points there. So one is when I'm writing code. Yeah, sometimes in certain cases, I will try to write some code with ChatGPT. ChatGPT's 4 API, and it'll happen exactly like you say. It'll look great, and then I'll try to run it, and I'll actually spend more time debugging the AI code to work the way I want it than I would if I would have written the code myself. But people get stuck on that one experience, and they don't realize that 8 times out of 10, though, it writes perfect code for what you need. They get stuck on that one experience of like, well, it didn't write this function the way I wanted to, and it errored out, and it took me 2 hours to fix it. And like, okay, but like in general, it's helping. And then the other one is that the methodology, I'm trying to design it in my head as we go because I've never written it down. But the methodology I use when I write code is I speak into Word, so like the text editor, because it has an excellent library for voice to text, and I describe what I want my code to do in as much detail as I can. I feed that to ChatGPT with some specifications about what technology I want to use. And I make sure at the end, I want every function and every call commented as to what it's doing. And I want debugging at every section of the code. And that's how I start a code project with ChatGPT. And then when it does invariably have that situation, it makes it infinitely faster for me to go debug where the issue is.
Oh, interesting. No, that does make sense. I can understand that completely.
Wait. So logging and monitoring are an important thing, Jason? Is that what I just heard?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have to bring it back to that every single episode. So.
We got the Crocs and socks up in the right-hand corner there for you.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
It's over your tile on my screen, so.
Yeah, same here.
Where it belongs.
We're all good.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, Okay, we've been going for an hour. Jason, we're going to have you back on. I know Aaron was going to reach
Yeah.
out to, schedule some other time.
Yeah.
I would love to actually do maybe some demos next time of, like this was ad hoc, like we've talked about a lot of this, but especially on the AI side, I'm getting a lot of requests again, like I said, from junior mid-level people on, okay, so how do you use that? Like, what would be the structure to do this? Is it something like TimeMinder that you're putting files in there to set the temperature and like what we're actually meaning there? It would be, if you're up for it, right? Like we'd love to have you back on to talk through that and demo some of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm down for it. I mean, if you guys want to get into the weeds though, you need to get Daniel on the show.
Yeah.
Like whatever I am, Dan is like 2x based on usage and design, and he's also the most masterful prompt engineer I've pretty much ever seen of everyone I've talked to in building any type of things, and then he rigs them up to APIs that he can use from the Linux command line. It is fantastic. So I would also suggest him for some of this.
Okay.
Stuff too.
Yeah. We'll reach out.
We've had requests to have him on, so I'll reach out because definitely want to have him on.
Yeah. Cool.
Sweet.
Yeah. Sweet.
I thought we did have Dan on at one point, but
we did.
Time to do it again.
That was within the first 50 episodes, right? So it's been a few years at this point. So sweet. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. I do want to be cognizant of your time. I know we're all busy. And is there any place, like, are you going to be at other like meetups or conferences?
Yeah. So let me check real quick. So so the next like public con, so I'm keynoting Microsoft Blue Hat in a couple weeks.
Congrats.
Thank you. So if you're going to be at Blue Hat, come say hi. After that, I think the next public one I'm doing a private conference where I'm talking, but I think the next one is Sans Hackfest in Hollywood. And so that's like Sans, like kind of offensive regional conference, and I'm giving a talk there on reconnaissance for adversaries. So that'll be the next one. I think that's in November. So I was hoping to see you guys at Texas Cyber because I was supposed to be there, but I got the worst basically sickness I've had in like years. So I really wanted to come out and see you guys, but didn't work.
Yeah, it would have been fun. No worries. We'll find another one. Yeah.
So
cool
guys.
Well, cool. Well, yeah. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And Ken, anything else that you want to bring up before we call it for today?
No, just a big thank you again. This is really fun. It was just nice to see you again.
Yeah. Nice to catch up. So
cool.
All right. Cool. Well, we'll see everybody online, I guess. Sorry. And have a good week. We'll talk soon.
All right. Later, everyone.